everyone, Morgan from Madeira, USA here. Nancy Minnie, our lovely embroidery expert here at headquarters, is with us today to go over some bobbin info. She'll go over the advantages to using each type of Madeira branded bobbin, from magnetic to sideless and everything in between. Be sure to say hi if you're watching live. Let us know some of your favorite bobbin types, and of course, if you have any questions, chime in here and we'll get them answered. With all that being said, Nancy, I'm going to hand it off to you. Take it away.
Thank you, Morgan. So Morgan was scanning over all of our bobbins that we have here at Madeira, and that are Madeira branded ones. All of our bobbins that are Madeira branded like this start with the prefix of 308, and they range from, like Morgan said, there's sideless, there's paper sided, there's magnetic sided, there's plastic sided. So if you look at some of the brands that we also carry, because sometimes people like to stick with that brand, sometimes when it comes to embroidery, you want to stick with what works for you, and we have those for you if that's what you like. However, everything that you see up there, we've got down here and a Madeira branded product, and we take great strides to make sure that our embroidery threads are top quality, whether it's the top thread or the bobbin thread like this. So every thread that is on these 6 different types of bobbins is the same exact thread. One's white, one's black, but they're all a polyester filament. So what that means is it's one continuous strand that is created the way that it's manufactured, as opposed to a spun. So there are some spun polyester bobbins that are out there. They tend to look a little more hairy, and I've actually got one here that I will see if you can get a little close to that. See the fuzziness?
Yeah, we can a little bit.
And then the filament has that kind of shine to it. And what happens with your spun is that because they have those little pieces that are spun together, it can create a little more lint in your bobbin case. And it's not really a big deal, but you do have to clean it out on a regular basis. And that thread is a little more hairy, like we showed. I put one out like that. And you can just see the difference between it really clearly. So you're probably going to have better tension settings with your filament versus your spun. So now we'll talk about the size of a bobbin. I have a nickel and I have a quarter, and you notice this guy's much bigger. That one's a little smaller. So that's the M style, goes in the M style bobbin case. That's the L style, goes in the L style bobbin case. And that's really a matter of your machine specification. If your machine specifies L style, you have to use the L, and vice versa for the M. I can tell you that the M style is very rare out in the embroidery industry when it comes to the machine embroidery machines, but they are out there, so we carry them for that reason. So most of your machines are going to take the L, like I said. Some of your home machines will take an A, and the difference between the A and the L, the diameters are both the same, about that diameter of a nickel, but you can see that the A is much thicker. So on some of your home machines, not all of them, they take that A style, and we have that in the Coates brand, and that's available with that spun polyester that we talked about. So now we're going to focus on our L's, because that's what we have, and that's what most of you are going to be using. So we'll focus on these. I also have the bobbin case out. I talked about this a couple weeks ago. Excuse me. When I was doing all of the accessories, I showed this to you as well, and I'm going to do it again today, just so that we're on the same page. So before we talk about the different bobbins, tension settings is probably the most important thing that you need to have your machine set up in order to run well. And those tension settings always starts with your bobbin case. So if you have a single needle, single bobbin case, they're working together. But on your bigger machines, you might have 15 colors on the top, but you're still only going to have that one bobbin or that one rotary hook area. That's for each of those needles. So you're always going to start tensioning your bobbin thread first. And it's always good to have a precision screwdriver, because you're going to need that for the screw. in your bobbin case if you need to adjust it. Bobbin cases always, make sure I do that right, spin clockwise, just like your analog clock. If you were to put this in backwards and you spun it, it's going counterclockwise. Okay. So the bobbins for most machines, check on yours, but most of them like to be clockwise. And that's how it's going to feed and work in the rotary hook area. There's a little tension flap here that I popped that thread under. Let's do that again. Maybe we can catch that on camera. Let's see. So I spin it in my hand first. Make sure I'm spinning clockwise, then I drop it in. There's a little,
see if I can get in there.
A little groove right there. It drops right in. And then you kind of snap that right under that flap. Little click. Some people do that drop test, where you try to get it to drop a little bit, about an inch, and then it's supposed to stop. There's also a pigtail on there. And this is on the bobbin case. Now I'm going to grab my tension gauge, turn that on. I'll move this aside for a minute.
While you're turning that on, Nancy, I have a couple questions here. You mentioned that all of the thread on these bobbins that we provide are the same. Is there a weight that is associated with that thread?
There is, and it's on the bobbin box. So bobbins are identified a little different than thread in that it's the 70 D-tex times 2. So that essentially means there's 2 strands of thread that are twisted together, and each one is 70 D-tex. Much thinner, probably more if you were going to compare this to an embroidery top thread. I would venture to say that it's a little thinner than a 60 weight thread. Okay. Maybe closer to your 75 weight, maybe even a little thinner. And it really doesn't matter which top thread you're using, whether it's the real thick Burmalana, the real thin Holly Neon 75, or anything in between with your metallics and all that, you're always using the same bobbin thread. You don't change out the bobbin thread per top thread, unless you're doing standalone lace and you're going to see the back side of that, and then you might be winding your own bobbin thread for that.
That was the next question. What are some options we have regarding winding your own bobbins?
I did not bring those in, but we do have some cones of thread that you can wind yourself. And they're kind of that thicker. They're not really thick thread, but they're that polyester spun, so they look a little bit thicker. So you can buy those cones and you can wind those yourself. You can use our 60 weight thread for bobbin thread. So if you're winding your own thread, you can, and you want to match the top color with the bottom color, you can wind those onto your own bobbin.
Perfect.
Bobbin cores, and then you'll have that same color on the top and the bottom.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so I've got my bobbin case on. I'm sorry, my tension gauge on. Make sure you keep it out of the pigtail. We have a video of this online for doing both the top thread and the bottom thread, and it's totally worth checking out. It shows you how to wind it like I am. I'm going to hold it right set up so you can see the numbers, and I'm essentially pulling, and that's a little high. I'm trying to get about 25, so I will turn this knob a little bit. Righty tighty, lefty loosey, same thing, and probably went a little too far on there. I'll go back a little.
Now, how important is it that we get it right to 25?
It really depends on your machine and the thread that you're using. Some threads are a little more tolerant when it comes to the tension, whereas other machines, so I got a little lower there. So you always want to start with your bobbin thread. Make sure that one bobbin case is tensioned properly, and then you're going to move to the top thread. And it's very important for especially your specialty threads, but you also want to do it for your rayon and your poly as well, because you're going to have less thread breaks. Even if your tension is loose on the top, you're still going to get thread breaks because that thread is flopping around and kind of creates loops and just doesn't perform well. So you want to get the tension right. So we have a chart very similar to this. I made this a little bigger so that we could see it really well. And this is for setting your top thread tension. So this is with a satin stitch. Sorry, I know I hit the speaker there. I'll try to avoid that. This is with a satin column stitch. So there's test stitch designs out there, and it's simply a column stitch. And now we're looking at the back side of that column stitch because we want to see how much bobbin is showing on the top. So our top thread is red, our bobbin is white in the middle. So you can see there that the top thread tension is too loose, so I need to tighten my knobs. If you're seeing way too much bobbin thread like that, that means your top thread tension is too tight, so you're going to loosen it up. If you're seeing 1/3 bobbin in the middle, the 2 top threads on the back, it's perfect. And that's what you're trying to obtain when you're setting your tensions.
Awesome.
And with your Madeira bobbins, with those the polyester filament threads, you're going to get a consistent thickness with those bobbin threads so that you're not constantly chasing your bobbin tension. So now we'll talk about our threads. I'll get to our best ones, like kind of all around. There are the magnetic bobbins, which are these guys here, our 308, 509, and 308, 509-B.
Perfect.
So they come in black and they come in white. You can see that's that same shiny thread. And they have one side that's a magnetic, the dark side. The other side is a paper-sided. And when these go into that bobbin case that I have right here, there we go. So I'm going to take that magnet side. First you want to find your tail. I can see it there, just can't get it. You're going to drop the magnet side down because now it's holding itself in that case.
Perfect.
And as you pull it, it's spinning clockwise. And then you're going to pull it through that flap and you're ready to check your tension and move forward with that. So why do you want a magnetic sided bobbin? Magnetic sided bobbins create a little bit more consistency when it comes to the tension settings. As it runs, it's not, as it gets smaller and smaller, it's not going to backlash or keep spinning. I'll be honest, I find the same kind of tension with all of them. But this just gives you, if you're having issues with that, or you just simply like magnetic bobbins, then by all means, we have these here for you at a great deal. And available in the black and white. So when would you use black over white? Most all of your embroidery is done with the white bobbin thread because you're never going to see the back side. So it doesn't matter if you're embroidering with red thread, blue thread on the top, or any other color, that white is going to be on the back side and you're never going to see it. Sometimes when you're doing embroidery, you do see the back side. And if you're embroidering, say, with a black top thread, which, you know, black is probably your most common color, that and white. And if you're going to see the back side of it at times, then you got your black thread. When I was doing the freestanding lace with black thread, I used the black bobbins so that it would be the same color on both sides.
Perfect.
So that's what your magnetic bobbins are for. A sideless bobbin, same exact thread. They put very minimal binder in there because you might say, how does that all hold together and not fall apart? Well, one thing you do want to know is if you're using these and you have a bobbin case that has the anti-backlash spring in it, you definitely want to take that out with these guys because that spring itself is going to kind of tear up the thread and it's not going to run well. So those can usually easily be pulled out. There's a little bit of binder in here that kind of holds it together. And there's very little to no buildup in your bobbin case with our threads, the sideless bobbins, because of the type of binder that they use. So there, you do want to keep an eye on it. Make sure you're cleaning out your bobbin case and your rotary hook. Some people's machines just simply run better on this. So, you know, when it comes to bobbins, it does boil down to your personal preference. But it's also going to be based on what your machine likes. So if your machine runs well on these, you're going to stick with them for sure. The other ones are here, and these are our plastic-sided ones. So if you think about your net bobbins that are out there, they're pre-wound, same exact thread on there, and they have the plastic sides. The reason why you would want to plastic side is not so much that you're going to rewind thread on them, because you could if you wanted to, but they're more so if you have a lot of heat and humidity, if you have issues with over oiling. Sometimes with the paper-sided ones, you can get oil on them, or they just start warping and then they don't run well. So your plastic sides are not going to absorb the oil if you get a little extra in there, but they're also not going to warp from the humidity that might be in the air. Or again, like I said, maybe it's just what your machine likes. And we have those. Last but not least are probably my favorite bobbins. Because they are simply a paper-sided polyester filament with a nice plastic core in the middle. And I find that these guys literally just run all the way to the end. I usually have no issues with them from beginning to end. And available in the white and the black. And, you know, when they're done and they run out, they're in the case here, and there's nothing left but that core and the paper side. So that means it's run all the way to the end. So this is probably, that's your go-to bobbin, I guess. If you don't know what to use, I would totally start with your paper-sided ones.
Awesome. That's a great tip.
Yeah. That's it. How are we doing with questions? Are we good?
We've got our questions answered.
Nice.
If anybody thinks of anything afterwards, feel free to comment here. Thank you again, Nancy, for all that helpful info. All of these bobbins, of course, are available at MadeiraUSA.com. Or if you'd like to call in to order, you can call 800-225-3001. You can feel free to do that as well. That is all from us for now. So we will see you next time. Thanks for your time.
Bye.